Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. I'm Joey Calvo. Please continue to help support the victims of the California wildfires and the Texas floods. They really do need our help as they are rebuilding. Welcome to Chapter 2, as I would call this. We have Laurie Kaye, who wrote a book called Confessions of a Rock N Roll Namedropper. Laurie was a radio personality who got the opportunity to what would be the last interview with John Lennon.
And just a reminder,
Yes.
My book is actually called Confessions of a Rock and Roll Namedropper, My Life Leading Up to John Lennon's Last Interview.
Okay. I apologize about that last part of it.
That's okay. That's the whole title.
Yeah. But Laurie has been on before, as you can tell. So like I said, we call this Chapter 2 because there are more that we're going to learn about Laurie today. As well as if you have questions on the live stream, please ask them away, please. Laurie, welcome back. And this time I'm going to confess, I went through the book again to get more questions, and I only got about 6 chapters in, only because most of it we kind of covered in the first part. But I'll probably rehash it again. Of course, you got, I'll let you explain. I'll let you start by explaining, how this all came to be. And then, if any of the questions I gave you already fall into it, that's one less I get to ask.
So what question are you asking me now?
Okay. No, I'm asking you to explain, for those who didn't see the first chapter of who you are.
Well, the first chapter of the book.
No. First chapter of our podcast. I call this Chapter 2.
I enjoyed the first chapter. I enjoyed meeting with you the first time.
Yeah. No. What I'm asking is, for those who didn't see that podcast, who is Laurie Kaye?
Oh, well, I'm a rock radio career person, and I've done tons of interviews with rock stars and so many others. And it was so exciting for me to finally write my book about it and to be able to talk to people like you about it and get complimented about it too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So what now in the book, she teases a lot about, what got her into radio, but what exactly got you into wanting to be in radio?
Well, first of all, as a toddler, I already had a transistor radio with earplugs, and I kept it plugged in nearly all day and every night, listening to AM radio stations, since my dysfunctional family upbringing gave me 24 hours a day all on my own. I kept digging AM and FM rock radio later in my life throughout my school years. And then in high school, I won tickets to the Rolling Stones Nicaragua benefit show in January 1973 at the Forum here in LA. And that was thanks to my favorite FM station, KMET. And when I went to pick up the tickets for that show, the cool disc jockey known as B. Mitchell Reed, also known as the Beamer, asked me to come on the air with him. And he told me afterwards that because I had a great voice and talked really well, I should definitely have an on-air career in radio. And then when I was in college at UC Berkeley's journalism school, a professor I had there told me I was already such a talented writer, I shouldn't bother to take classes anymore. Instead, I should get an internship, which would no doubt lead to a fast full-time job. So I could quit college and make money right away instead. So thanks to KFRC AM in San Francisco, that's exactly what happened. I got their only newsroom radio internship, and it led right away to my very first radio gig, as well as tons of rock star interviews and writing so many popular rock radio specials.
Right. All right. So, believe it or not, I had sent an email to all my former guests and everything. What's going on with this podcast? We are working on saving it. So, because of, I'm not working right now. And so one thing that I can say is that we're doing a GoFundMe right now. So the link is on the bottom in the ticker. I sent the GoFundMe link out to all the guests and everything. And so far, we have raised $50. And we have looked, believe it or not, at a possible local radio / TV station in Philadelphia to get started with, possibly in January. It's municipal access, of course. It's like municipal access. And so I got a chance to look at the location, and I was amazed. And to find out that they actually use this platform that I use now for the podcast. So one hurdle was taken right out of there for me. But hopefully, if people do contribute to the GoFundMe, we will be able to keep this podcast going in the meantime, as well as get onto the that station in here in Philadelphia, with the goal of being on TV by January. And I'm sorry I had to take a little bit of time away from Laurie on that. But being that we're talking about radio and so I wanted to share that opportunity. So it's in the link on the bottom. Please help out as much as you can. So back to Laurie. Now, of course, you had that opportunity to meet with John and Yoko at the Dakota in New York, which would wind up being his last days with us. So we're going to rehash that day first. So you get the assignment to go to New York and interview John and Yoko for their album Devil Fantasy that was coming out in 1980. Go a little bit into that feeling from when you got the assignment to when you came to New York.
Well, I was really thrilled to hear that I could go to New York with Dave Sholin, who's the music director at KFRC and RKO, and Ron Hummel, who's our engineer producer. So we were the RKO radio team, and then we were also going with Bert Keane from Warner Brothers Records. He was the executive who kind of put it all together for us. And I was thrilled, and I waited to hear what date was going to be chosen for us to be there. And what happened was they asked our birth dates and everything to figure out what the best date would be, to the astrologer. And so we gave all that information to them, and they came up with December 8th, 1980, which I still see as being horrifying. So I feel guilty for my birthday. And even though I was thrilled to go to New York to interview John and Yoko, I was kind of upset because we'd been told, no, you can't ask John about his past or the Beatles.
Right.
This is all about his present.
Mm-hmm.
And, the release of Double Fantasy, which had just come out.
Right.
So I came up with questions to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an incredible interview because John himself brought up meeting up with Paul McCartney and the Beatles and meeting up with Yoko and quite a bit about his past. So it worked out really, really well.
Right.
The sad part was, of course, that he was shot and killed mere hours after the interview ended.
Right. And of course, you actually came face to face with the assassin, even though you don't mention him by name, and of course, it was all out there about it, and but there was a little tidbit you brought into the book, in reference to the Dakota itself.
About being accosted by that creep?
Besides that.
Oh, well, I really loved being at the Dakota with John and Yoko.
Mm-hmm.
Their private office was incredible. Mm-hmm. And I loved sitting on the love seat, because when John came in, he sat down right next to me for hours. And every time I would ask a question or make a comment, he would throw down his glasses and look at me and say, "Yes, Laurie, great love."
Yeah.
And he was so complimentary and validating. It was just a thrilling time to spend with him and Yoko.
And there was something, that was kind of, it's kind of leading to where I was going with it, but also you brought a little something that you would think a child would enjoy, but you had two bigger children in the room with you at that time.
Well, I brought a present for Sean because, of course, it had just been 2 months before John and Sean's birthday on October 9th. And John told us that he felt like he was a twin with Sean because they had the same birthday. But anyway, so I brought Sean this incredible wind-up metal breathing dragon. And what happened was, when I showed it to John and Yoko, they were thrilled, and John wound it up and started playing with it and watched it walk and run up and down the coffee table in front of our love seat. And he said, "Oh gosh, I don't know if we're going to give this to Sean. This is so cool. We may just want to keep it for ourselves." I never knew if he did, of course, because he passed away. And I always wondered if Yoko ended up giving it to Sean. And I never knew until last year, when I finally met Sean for the first time. And I told him who I was and gave him a signed copy of my book. And of course, I told him I'd done his dad's last interview. And I asked him if his mother ever gave him that fire-breathing dragon toy. And he said, "Oh my God, that was my favorite toy as a kid. Of course she did." So that made me feel great.
Oh, but of course, after that interview and after what had happened, you barely got to see Yoko ever again afterwards. I mean, you were at the hospital. Matter of fact,
I did go to the hospital when I found out that John had been shot. But I didn't go talk to Yoko because I looked through the big glass door and saw her crying, sobbing hysterically inside. And I thought to myself, "Oh my God, John wasn't just shot. I have a feeling he was killed. And if I go in, I will remind her of why she was even here with John when they were supposed to be across the country." But they were told to stay here for our interview. So I never have seen Yoko again, sadly. I've tried to contact her, but I'm guessing she doesn't really want to be in touch with me ever, because I remind her of
what happened. Yeah. But as I was asking before in reference to Dakota, not only that you saw the assassin, and not only that you did that last interview with John Lennon, but there was someone else famous that you mentioned in the book in reference to living near John and Yoko.
James Taylor.
Yes, that's where I was going.
Well, he said, not told me, but he did, make it public afterwards that he had been in contact with that creepy guy when he was in front of the Dakota, where he lived really close to, and he was horrified by it, just like I was, having been accosted and bugged by that guy and followed down the street when I left the Dakota. And so that's something that James Taylor and I have in common.
Yeah. So, of course, we're coming up on 45 years already since this happened. And, of course, they named part of Central Park. There's a little piece of Central Park that's named after John, Strawberry Fields. Of course, John had such great music. Imagine. That was always one of my favorites. Matter of fact, one day I actually just, like, out of the blue, I had Pluto TV, and they were playing and they were playing Imagine, the video. And as I was watching it, I was like, wow, I just couldn't believe that, the opportunity to be meeting them in person and interviewing them and getting to learn, all about double fantasy and all that at the time. But definitely his music will live on.
Absolutely.
So we're gonna stop there with John, because I don't want to, not that I don't want to make it any more about it, because there's more to Laurie than just John Lennon. She mentioned before about having a past that wasn't the greatest. And one thing that was picked up, as she mentioned about, was her mom got this brand new Chevy Impala, and nice and snow white, and loved the car, and went out and, Laurie, I'm going to let you explain that part.
Well, first of all, I have to tell you that my mother and I were living with her parents, my grandparents, and we walked down from their apartment to the parking lot so she could take me to my daycare center before she went to work early one morning. And she had that beautiful, nearly new Chevy Impala that my grandfather had bought for her. And she loved her giant white car, since it no doubt helped give the impression that she was the sophisticated 20-something-year-old young woman she so desperately wanted to be seen as. And as we headed over to her car that morning, I heard my mother suddenly scream in horror. Her cool white car was littered with at least a dozen slaughtered, oozing rats with huge swastikas painted in their blood all over the hood, the windshield, and sides of the Chevy. And no other car in the lot had been touched, just hers, as she was possibly the only Jew parked there, since my grandparents had already driven off earlier that morning. And my mom and I then ran straight back up to the apartment and spent the entire morning crying and freaking out before heading over to an auto paint company, since that Jew-hating mess couldn't come off in a car wash. And we never found out why my mother was anti-Semitically hurt like that.
Yeah. That was one of the questions that I had was why was your mom a target of anti-Semitism? But I mean, finding out that that your family was the only one that was attacked out of it per se, which is sad to hear, of course, and back then, it's not like today if something like this was going on, there'd be all these riots and everything, but dating back 50, 60 years, something like this happened. It was just like under the bridge. But so another thing your mom got you interested in was getting rid of you, quote unquote. But one interesting thing that you did enjoy out of all the instances that she, quote unquote, got rid of you. Actually, before I get to that, we're going to start with the sad one. And this really got to me a little bit because I would never, ever picture a child going through this. So I'm going to have Laurie explain it. And I'm talking about your mom was on the phone for hours and hours, and she did something with you that would freak people out now.
Well, she didn't want me in the room with her when she was on the phone. And even though I wasn't listening, I was listening instead to a transistor radio. So she would make me go out into the living room. She would be talking on the phone in the bedroom. And she made me lay down on the floor and stay there the entire time. And it was really creepy because I would have to be there for hours and hours because she would be on the phone forever. So that was something that I remember. It was really creepy.
Yeah. And she literally pretended like she nailed Laurie to a cross on that floor. And when I read it, I was like, I mean, my mom and dad, had 2-3 jobs. So, it wasn't like, I was tossed around, quote unquote, too, in my childhood. It was either one brother or sister was babysitting me while my mom and dad were working or out at meetings and stuff until I got a little bit older. Then they started to trust me by myself. So they say, or so they think. Of course, that that being horrifying and stuff. But the best thing out of your mother, quote unquote, getting rid of you was she sent you to the movies.
Well, what she did was because she didn't ever want to take care of me. She always wanted to spend time with her friends, and she didn't want to hire a babysitter. So she would take me and drop me off at a movie theater, figuring that there were so many people there, I'd be okay. And one of the great movies I was so excited to see, actually with friends, was A Hard Day's Night. And the problem was that even though I was so excited to see it, it was crazy thanks to all the screaming, singing, and dancing teenage girls in the audience. And the good part is that just a year ago, I finally got to see it again
Uh-huh.
here in the local theater. And it was thrilling because everybody now was totally quiet and,
Mhm.
just it was great. The thing was, although we were all appreciative and quiet,
Mhm.
and obviously Doug seeing the Beatles in their very first movie from all the way back in 1964, it
Mhm.
actually made me cry to watch it and see the late, great John Lennon and
Mhm.
George Harrison look so incredible,
Mhm.
since I remembered talking to each one of them so very well.
Mhm.
And it made me sad.
Yeah. Did you ever get to see Yellow Submarine?
Yes, years ago.
Okay. That I actually enjoyed. I actually got to watch it again in its entirety. Um, of course, Yellow Submarine was the most famous, besides The Hard Day's Night, most famous of the movies that the Beatles did back in the 60s. Um, so, um, and you answered the question I was going to ask you about if you ever got to see it by yourself, without interference of some kind. And you just answered that. So now we're going to get back into we're still being in your childhood. And this actually surprised me. And believe it or not, folks, it took about 4 emails for her to find the answer, or to remember this, because one thing that her second stepfather had was this big, um, stereo system, I'll
He
call it.
was my first and only stepfather.
Oh, first and only. Okay. And so, of course, she was always denied access to it. But if any vinyl was being played at the time, um, she when she mentioned this, I was like, I didn't even hear this album, believe it or not. And I am a Herb Alpert fan.
Wow. Well,
And and yes, that's why I kept asking that question. You were like, I don't remember it. I don't remember it. I don't remember it. Like I said, it took 4 emails for her to remember it.
Well, let me explain.
Yeah.
I wasn't permitted to even touch my stepfather's stereo back in my early days.
Mhm.
So when I was home and wanted to hear music from a record, I had to wait for my mother or husband to be playing one of theirs. And
Mhm.
this would usually be his copy of The Lonely Bull,
Right.
which was Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass's very first album.
Mhm.
But to be honest, I wasn't much of a fan back then,
Yeah.
probably because it was his favorite album.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
automatically didn't want to listen to it. And
Yeah.
I would have much rather, of course, wanted to hear a Beatles album,
Of
or a
course.
few years later, the Monkees. But neither my mother or my stepfather ever got any albums for me to listen to and
Right.
enjoy hearing. And that really upset me. So that's why I had to start working and earning money really early in my life as a babysitter and
Mhm.
a couple other jobs I had.
Right.
So I buy my own record player and plenty of albums too. So it was great.
Now, one thing, now we're gonna start leaving the childhood a little bit, and so one thing that happened in your start to freedom, we'll call it, was summer camp, and you had mentioned in the book about how you're at camp and your group came across a rattlesnake.
Yeah. And it was really weird because I went to camp to get away from my mother and my stepfather for several weeks every summer for a few years.
Mhm.
And this was back when I was a kid, and at my Girl Scout camp, I was out hiking one day with my fellow campers and our head counselor when suddenly someone screamed, "Snake!" And the counselor quickly jabbed her forked snake stick into the ground on either side of the coiled rattler's head. And then she took out her mini axe out of its waistband holster and chopped off the snake's head.
Right.
And from there, she cut off the snake's rattles and cut and peeled off its snake skin. And then she led us all back to the camp to build a fire so that we could cook the snake.
Yeah.
So yes, I did eat rattlesnake meat once in my life.
Okay. Yeah.
And if I remember, it tasted just like salty chicken. But to be honest, I haven't eaten any chicken or any meat in more than 30 years. So I honestly don't remember what it tasted like exactly.
Yeah. But I actually had it once too, and I actually liked it because my ex-father-in-law was into the exotic foods like that. So, and believe it or not, here in Philadelphia, I actually live near the Italian market. So if you ever come to Philadelphia, one place to check out is the Italian market. It's right on off the 9th in Washington. It's like all these stores, inside and outside, and covered, for the weather and everything. And there's one store that I walked into, and they have bison burgers. And so I thought about it. And one day I'm still thinking about it. But you'll be able to find like rabbit, rattlesnake, bison, etc. Right there in Philadelphia. So we're gonna get out of that now, and we're gonna jump for a little further out in her life. And so you got the opportunity. You had a lot of opportunities, we'll say. You mentioned many concerts you went to, from the Rolling Stones and Managua concert to Jethro Tull, who I actually got to see Ian Anderson. I think I mentioned it in the first podcast. I actually got to see Ian Anderson and the newer version of Jethro Tull celebrating their 50th in Atlantic City. And what was crazy is back then you were able to get away with taking pictures of like the bands and stuff in the arenas. If we were caught now, and this is in a casino of all places, taking a picture from our cell phone, we were escorted out because they did not want their pictures taken. So I was trying to slip one without the flash going off and stuff, and I had gotten warned. So, but I did get that opportunity to see Ian Anderson. That was 22, I believe. Yeah, 22. So, but you actually came across meeting someone who, of course, became famous here on the East Coast as well, and had late night Saturday shows by the name of Dr. Demento.
Well, yes, and I had a high school dance while I was a senior in high school, hosted by Dr. Demento. So I never got to see him again after that dance, but when I went there as a senior at Uni High, it was super cool. It was the eagerly anticipated Sock Hop, hosted by super popular KMET FM DJ Barry Hansen otherwise known as Dr. Demento.
Mhm.
And he played plenty of classic 50s and 60s rock and roll radio hits for us to all do the jitterbug to. And it
Mhm.
was tons of fun for me and my friends. I had a great time.
Yeah. And then you got the opportunity and even eventually got to work with the late Dick Clark.
I did. It was really cool to first meet Dick Clark.
Mhm.
Way back after I just graduated high school,
Mhm.
I was part of a Dick Clark dance contest
Mhm.
because this upcoming actor named Dana, who I met, took me to the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium
Mhm.
to be part of the contest with him.
Mhm.
And this was all the way back in 1973.
Mhm.
And thanks to both contest judges, Dick Clark and Chubby Checker, Dana
Mhm.
and I were said to be the best dancers. And we won, and we were featured to promote the upcoming ABC TV special series called Dick Clark Presents the Rock and Roll Years.
Mhm.
And when Chubby Checker and Dick Clark chose me and Dana as their number one dance team, I
Mhm.
couldn't help but tell Chubby all about my love for the twist
Uh-huh.
and how, thanks to him and his hit song, I've
Mhm.
learned how and begun to dance as a little kid in the late 50s.
Mhm.
I was super happy to hear that. And he
Mhm.
told me that he already thought I was a professional dancer.
Mhm.
Years later, when I got hired to work for Dick Clark, Dick recognized me and remembered me right away and
Mhm.
went to his shelf and took out a picture that had been taken of me and Dana and
Mhm.
him and Chubby at the dance contest
Mhm.
that I still have. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dick Clark, of course, went on to really bring out entertainment, not only from American Bandstand, but also in towards creating what we have for New Year's Eve now, in reference to celebrations. Um,
Yeah, and the
so
cool thing that I got to do when working for Dick Clark was not just write his weekly radio countdown show, but he begged me to ghostwrite his weekly nationally syndicated newspaper column. So
Mhm.
I said, yeah, sure. And I got to go to concerts and I
Mhm.
got to do interviews, not
Mhm.
pretending to be Dick Clark, but writing as though I were Dick Clark.
Yeah,
And it was really thrilling.
yeah. Um, so in reference to that, um, and in reference to being at having that opportunity of like interviewing John and Paul and George, um, didn't make it to Ringo, uh, but of all the interviews that you did, and now we're going to really pick your brain on this one. Who do you think was the best interview you ever had? All right, all right. I'm going to take John out of the picture right off the bat. I'm going to take John out of the picture because, of course, that being the last one he ever did, and we already mentioned how good that one was. So we'll say the second best.
They were all incredible, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to RKO Radio, I
Mm-hmm.
conducted so many awesome interviews for years, both
Mm-hmm.
before and after John Lennon was killed.
Mm-hmm.
Most while I worked at KFRC in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to interview Paul and Linda McCartney and their latest lineup of Wings in London.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then John and Yoko at the Dakota in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed George Harrison on the phone, and thrilling at KFRC to interview the Ramones. And that was after I'd already seen them twice live. And it was amazing. And I totally dug talking with them about punk rock and CBGBs in New York, which I ended up living next door to in the 80s. And interviewing Grace Slick from Jefferson Airplane and Starship was really cool too.
Yeah.
And excuse me. And so many other great interviews. Talking Heads and
and of course, most of these bands are still around, well, except for the Ramones, because I think the last member just passed away. I think all the Ramones have passed away now.
They all did years ago.
Yeah. But of course, they had great music. Like Rock and Roll High School. That was a great song back then. And of course, that tells my age as well. Grace Slick of Airplane, and now it's changed into so many other names to the point I think it's still back. I don't even know if it's still Starship or it went back to Jefferson Starship or Jefferson. It's still something, but they changed it so many times.
I saw them recently too, actually.
Yeah.
The very first concert that I saw in LA after COVID had stopped, letting anybody go have concerts, was actually one with Jefferson Starship.
Yeah.
And although Grace Slick wasn't playing with them anymore, her daughter was there singing. So it was very cool to see. I enjoyed that concert a lot.
Yeah. And then of course the Talking Heads they're celebrating 50 years now.
They're amazing. And Chris Grant, drummer, loved my book and wrote an amazing comment that appears on the back of my book. And he's great. He's a friend.
So of all the members of Talking Heads, and you mentioned one of the members writing in the book, who is the most interesting member of the band to chat with? I have an idea of one, because of how outspoken he was.
Lead singer, is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Yes. David Byrne.
They were all great, and they were all informative and had great things to say. And you'll get plenty of quotes when you read my book, because I talk a lot about them and the interview we did.
Yeah. And then you even you got a chance to see Elton John when you were younger. And I'm going to give you a confession. I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I actually share my birthday with Sir Elton John.
Cool.
Yes. I am a March 25th baby, just like Elton John, as well as the late, oh my gosh. Yeah, I should remember this. Well, Sarah Jessica Parker, the actress, as well as, oh my God, her name is on the tip of my tongue and I can't get it out. And I mentioned it so many times. I can remember it so many times, and this one I actually blank out on. But but yes, I share my birthday with Sir Elton John. But you also got the opportunity. You were on the radio at the time. You were doing your newscasts, and you were interrupted not once, but twice with two different phone calls. Would you like to explain those two phone calls that you got?
Well, I wasn't interrupted. I wasn't on the air already, but I think you're talking about the interviews with Dave Sholin. Excuse me, not Dave Sholin, with Dave Sholin's the music director.
Yeah.
With Mick Jagger was the first one. Yeah. And what happened is that he called right before I was about to do my newscast. And I said, "Oh, Mick, I really want to interview you, but I have to do my newscast first. Do you want me to call you back, or do you want to call me back?" And he said, "No, keep me on the phone. I'll listen to your newscast." So I said, "Oh, okay." And I was nervous, but I did the newscast. And afterwards, Mick said, "Wow, you were great. You have a great voice. You told great stories." And it made me feel terrific. And we had a wonderful interview on the phone too for the show that I was writing that was coming up, the top 100 of the 70s. And, it was one of my my very favorite interviews of all times.
Okay. And then the second one was with a great singer, I will say. I actually have him on my Spotify.
Who?
Ziggy Stardust himself, David Bowie.
Well, yes, David Bowie's call was wonderful too. And I wasn't about to go on the air when he called. So I got to tell him right away about going to see his great Ziggy Stardust concert back when I was in high school, and how thrilled I was to have seen him so many times after that too. And I just, I have plenty of his quotes and everything in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was really cool to describe, um, writing and singing the song "Fame" with
Yeah.
John Lennon. So it was great to be able to talk to him.
Oh yeah, I loved Fame, and I actually have Blue Jean on my Spotify. Um, I don't know why I don't have Fame. I should have Fame on my Spotify because that song really rocked out. But of course, I was also, I'm also into Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin too. And I mean, I had the opportunity. I actually had gotten tickets back in 90, was it 90 something or 80 something? No, it had to be 90s because I had my license then. They were playing. This was the last tour. This was Echoes. I think it was Echoes. Was the last tour they did. And they were going to be at what's now MetLife Stadium. No, it was either MetLife or what's now called, well, it's now a studio, but it used to be the Izod Arena, or at my time, the Brendan Byrne Arena in Secaucus at the Meadowlands. And of course, my car died on me. Or actually, no, my car didn't die. It's just if I went to take the car out on the road, I would have gotten tickets because there was no bumper to the car. But especially going down the turnpike. And plus, there were other problems with the car. So I attempted to get a limousine, and I had a couple friends that were going with me. The limousine never showed. So I never got the opportunity to see it, and I was really depressed because I wanted to see Pink Floyd so badly. So I had to watch the video, the DVD of the concert back then. But you got the opportunity to talk with Talking Heads, the Ramones. But I'm gonna go into a certain monkey that you had the opportunity to get to know briefly. And God rest his soul. He was funny back then. You want to talk about him?
Peter Tork.
Yep.
He was my favorite.
Yep.
And the weird thing is that I got to meet him, and not due to the radio or an interview or anything, but what happened was it was so great to meet. He reached out to talk to me when I was walking down the Santa Monica Promenade, an outdoor shopping center, and he introduced himself and started asking me about myself. And this was, when I was in college, and he invited me to a show that he was in that night at the Troubadour, and said he'd put me on his guest list. And I went, and he played great. And unfortunately, I never got to see or talk to him ever again afterwards, which was really sad for me. And I also wished I had a chance to meet the Monkees.
That was going to go right into the question.
Since I loved their TV show and loved their music so much as a kid.
Well, Laurie, I actually have a confession for you. Minus Mike, I got to see Peter, Davey, and Mickey at what's now called the PNC Bank Arts Center in Homedale, New Jersey. This was back in the 80s, definitely 80s. They were out on tour, and I got to see them. And actually, at the time that I went to see them, you know how we talked about your Girl Scout camp? Well, I had a couple of my Boy Scout members with me, and we all got to see the Monkees. And it was one of the most interesting concerts I've ever seen. Of course, you know, being a fan of theirs in a way, you know, of course, enjoying the music and, you know, rocking out to it. But I'm going to tell you a very quick story. And this is, you know, of course, a group that you probably didn't, well, you didn't get the chance, maybe you did get the chance to interview in another way, but I actually, this was 1988, believe it or not, and I took this young lady out who wound up being my prom date, being that, you know, you didn't go to prom, and we went to see oh my God, Motley Crue, there we go, at the Nassau Coliseum in New York. Now, this is going to probably crack you up. It will crack, and everybody can take a laugh at this. You know, of course, I drove 3.5 hours to get to this concert. And so the concert started. Well, I kind of fell asleep. I actually fell asleep during the whole concert. And all of a sudden I woke up and Tommy Lee is over my head with his drums. And I'm like, what the hell? And like, I felt so bad, you know, because the date that I was with, you know, the person I was with for it. So I made it up and I took her to the same concert. Matter of fact, it was the same concert at what's like I said, what's now a TV studio, but it was the Brendan Byrne Arena. And I actually stayed awake the whole time because the Meadowlands is not far from where I lived back then. But, you know, of course, that night didn't turn out as well either because, you know, back then, you know, everybody was in this either smoking cigarettes or smoking pot, and she was all the way up the top. And you have a story actually in reference to in your book, in reference to one of the venues you were at about being on that top tier, that fully top tier.
Oh, well, that was when I saw the Beatles as a little kid. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. We saw them at Dodger Stadium with elementary school friends of mine, a girl I knew. It was her birthday, so her mother got tickets for her and several of her friends, and we went. And but the tickets were way up at the top, so it was hard to see and hear them. Plus, everybody in the audience, and it was packed, of course, was jumping up and down and singing, and you know, so it was hard as a kid to see. But I'm still glad I got to do it.
Yeah. So, and so, as we're coming up towards the hour, I'm going to throw these very quickly in. One, and I'm going to jump way back into the childhood again. Well, not the childhood, but in your college years. Now, the first time I brought this up, you kind of didn't recognize where I was going with it at the time, but there was a guy that you were interested in who went and got you clothes, but instead of the clothes being with you, they stayed with him. And one night you caught him with it to find out he was, and as I would call it now, on the 50th anniversary of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And to Tim Curry's character, and of course, a great actor who suffered a stroke, is now in a wheelchair. But you had a Dr. Frankenfurter, in a way.
I had a Dr. what?
The transvestite. That what I was just saying about the clothes.
Oh,
you caught him?
Well, he was my boyfriend in college at Santa Cruz. And as I've mentioned before, I named every chapter in my book off of one of my favorite songs. And the chapter about him, I named Dude Looks Like a Lady,
right?
Which was the And he was a great boyfriend. It just was weird that he bought me clothes and then ended up wearing them. But stuff like that happens.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said it. I took that into the Rocky Horror Picture Show in reference to who he was, in reference to that. So that's why I said that was the character's name, was Dr. Frankenfurter.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And, of course, Rocky Horror now being in its 50th. And believe it or not, they're actually on tour with one of the original actors. And, of course, now his name is on the tip of my tongue, and I can't get it out. But give me a minute. Give me a minute, folks. There we go. And I've seen him on TV so many times, and I just couldn't remember his name right off the tip of my tongue. I mean, I can remember Tim Curry because, Barry Bostwick, that's who it is. Barry Bostwick is actually on tour celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And, of course, Tim Curry has gone out on conventions, but, like I said, now, unfortunately, his health has deteriorated. He wound up having a stroke and is now confined to a wheelchair. And I've seen interviews with him recently on YouTube. But Laurie, I thank you so much for coming back on the podcast and explaining a little bit more about the history and rehab, bringing back memories in your life of different things. And I know I didn't bring everything out this time like I did the first time, but you're anything new that ever comes up, you're welcome to come back on. You just reach out to me, and of course it's always great talking with you and learning about all these legends that I grew up on, like the Talking Heads, David Bowie, and the Beatles, and Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, and there were. I'm going to make this last question because I didn't bring out everybody. Who else did you get that opportunity besides, John, Paul, George, Linda, Wings, Talking Heads, the Ramones, David Bowie, Mick Jagger. Who else did you have that opportunity to mention that you mentioned in the book?
Little Richard Penniman.
That's right.
Super cool to interview.
Yes.
It was for Rock Magazine.
Yeah.
Years after the John Lennon interview, but it was just incredible. And I mentioned a number of other interviews that I did too, and quote them and describe them. And I hope people will read my book and find out all about them.
Yeah. Oh, and in reference to that, I did have one more question. Have you thought about going back on the radio and bringing up, the tapes that you had of all these interviews that you did, and doing a special of your own?
Well, the problem is that they're owned by the company that bought out RKO Radio Network when they went out of business. So I don't own the interviews. So technically I can't put them on the air. However, I do a lot of radio show interviews on my own and TV show interviews, and people can check them all out, as well as plenty of the podcasts I've done on my book's website, which is confessionsofarockandrollnamedropper.com. And there's lots of information about the book and where people can buy it. There's a segment called Purchase on it, and it tells you where you can go to get it in stock in stores or in libraries, and also order it online. So hopefully everybody will.
Okay. All right. So here's the website, confessionsofarockandrollnamedropper.com. Laurie, like I said, thank you again. And if anything new comes out, reach out to me. I'll be happy. Who knows? Maybe the next time may not be YouTube. It might be radio or TV the next time. So definitely, folks, like I said, go to the GoFundMe page and definitely help support this podcast to keep it going, so that way we can bring these great interviews out to you and expand it, like I said, to radio and TV. Because not only do I want to bring it out in Philadelphia, but I had been working with someone who is wanting to get it out in Atlanta, Boston, Chicago, LA, and Seattle. So Laurie would be able to hear the podcast on the radio on a Saturday. I think they were going to do it on. I think that was the time slot that at the time that I was being told about in reference to it, which didn't bother me because it was on the radio. It would have been on the radio. So definitely help as much as you can. Every donation helps. And Laurie, thank you again for coming on and enlightening us with your stories and your life, and the life that you went through, and all these opportunities you got, and meeting all these great people, like you said, Little Richard and the Talking Heads and the Ramones and John Paul George, and talking with David Bowie and Mick Jagger, and all these great interviews that you did, and of course Peter Tork. I actually in closing too, we had talked about Dana, and I had asked her if she knew his actual last name, because I was Googling it, trying to see if I can find. I mean, the Dana that I found was older than this one, so I had no luck trying to figure out who it was. But Laurie, again, thank you so much. Definitely go to confessionsofarockandrollnamedropper.com. Get the book. It's really good. It is really good. The first podcast we did, I had no choice but to go through the book. I apologize I didn't go through the book all this time. But I still had the idea of, what was going on back then. And so, I was able to pick it up this time. But Laurie, thank you so much again for being on the podcast.
You're welcome.
All right. And thank you everyone for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. God bless you all.